2,500 miles off the coast of Peru, in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean, is one of the most mysterious pre-diluvian sites on the planet, Easter Island, also referred to as Rapa Nui. In 2017, a team of researchers dug up Moai monoliths on Easter Island and were stunned to find the statues' bodies buried below the earth some 33 feet. While excavating these statues, the team found etched petroglyphs on the backs of the figures, most commonly in the shape of crescents, as well as hands that wrapped across the figures' waists. They also discovered red dye on the monoliths that scientists determined was created by heating a mixture of magnetite and hematite. Mainstream understanding is that the ancient inhabitants of Easter Island were only 800 years old, and that the Moai monoliths reflect this age. But alternative researchers point out that this discovery uncovers a much older truth, one that brings back the timeline of humanity before the Great Deluge.
So 2017, finally the archaeologists had a chance to dig deep into Easter Island and look at the Moai, who we tend to think of these beautiful little faces looking at the sky. Well, imagine to their surprise that they dig 40 feet into the volcanic tuff and, well, they have a body and the resemblance of legs and the hands nicely positioned around the navel. And on top of it, they found some lovely inscriptions on the back of the statues, kind of like tattoos, even with a little bit of the red ochre still attached to it, suggesting that the statues themselves had been painted in earlier times. This is very important for a whole bunch of reasons. For once, we can actually get to the bottom of the statue, literally, put a probe under the statue and extricate some organic material to find out how old the statues have been there. And I've been in touch with the lead archaeologist at the site, and it's like, well, we found some organic material. Yes, we can now do some DNA. We can actually tell when the statues were put there. And meanwhile, 4 years later, the information still hasn't been made public. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm beginning to suspect that the dates are going to be very uncomfortable for mainstream archaeology. And having spoken to geologists on the subject, that 40 feet of material covering a very long body does not account for 800 years of erosion on Easter Island, especially given the climate of Easter Island. So we're talking about a dating which is going to be very, very inconvenient.
At Easter Island, we have these great Moai heads, and everyone thought they just stopped at the chest. Actually, when they started digging, they discovered that these Moai had full bodies, super megalithic bodies. Now, when you look at these bodies, they had all this ornate carving on them. If you look at the same thing at Göbekli Tepe, where they dug out this area and found these pillars, they have these same ornate drawings on them. You can see the similar birds, similar animals, and what's incredible is the animals and birds and the other objects carved are not from the region, neither from Göbekli Tepe nor Easter Island. So what is this? How can we have two of the very similar carvings of things not from those regions halfway across the world? So Easter Island was an eye-opener for a lot of us to make us say, well, obviously, these civilizations were linked in some way.
So there are similarities between the styles of carving, the 3D relief carving on Easter Island, as there are at places like Göbekli Tepe. Now, people think there's no connection between these two ancient cultures, but it really looks like there is. I mean, one of the most obvious things is the fact that they have these hands, very long fingers pointing towards the navel. Now, not only do we get that design on the Göbekli Tepe T-pillars in these abstract human forms, we get it on the Moai, but also we must remember that in tradition, Easter Island was traditionally called the navel of the world. Likewise, Göbekli Tepe was called Potbelly Hill, again referencing the navel. And this is all about the omphalos, the sacred center, and building your civilization around this kind of sacred point. And both of these had the same tradition, which is very, very strange. At a site called Nevali Churi in southeast Turkey, which dates to around 10 to 11,000 years old, it's now been destroyed. This is one of the sister sites to Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. And here they have multiple statues, again, like Easter Island, with these hands going towards the navel. But one of the statues has an identical design to what we find on one of the bases that the Moai stand on in Easter Island, and it appears to be like two dancing, standing up human forms. And this is on one of the statues, and it's like partly ceramic that we find at Navali Churi, but it's also on one of the foundation blocks of the Moais in Easter Island. And when I looked at them, I couldn't believe it. They're almost identical.
Several ancient traditions speak of specific energy centers, or chakras, within the human body. Could the posture of these megalithic pre-diluvian statues be pointing future civilizations to the importance of these sacred areas in the body?
When we consider the possibility that ancient civilizations, pre-diluvian civilizations, could have developed in a cyclic manner, and that there is a continuity of knowledge and information, tradition, that is carried from cycle to cycle. One of the key places that we begin to see some of these traditions is with the depictions of the people who lived during these times, the people themselves. How are they depicted? What are their body postures? What are they showing us about themselves and their relationship to the world? Easter Island is a fascinating example of this, as the excavations have revealed more to the statues in the Easter Island than were known to exist in the past. As the excavations have taken below ground level and shown that there are entire bodies that accompany the heads, it's the hand positions that are intriguing scholars. The way the hands are placed on the body, they're not simply at their sides, but they're showing a particular part of the body. And the question is, do we see that in other places? The answer is we do, and we see it in a very interesting way. In Peru, for example, there is the legend in Lake Titicaca of how the Peruvian people began. When a being from another world came to this world, and the being that came is named Tumi, T-U-M-I, and Tumi's hands are always placed also in front of the body, but a very particular part of the body on the heart chakra. Perhaps one of the most fascinating is with Göbekli Tepe, where we see the representations of the humans and their hands are placed on the solar plexus as well. So we have two cultures, hands placed precisely the same place. Well, when we begin looking at other cultures, what we find is that their hands are placed on other chakras as well. In Easter Island, they are lower energy centers or lower chakras. Peru, middle chakras. And when we look into Egypt, we begin seeing that the hands are placed over the solar plexus chakra. Each of these has very particular significance within the culture itself, with Peru being a very feminine, very heart-based culture, for example. In Easter Island, what we find is that it is that energy of survival and being able to transcend the elements and whatever hardships and challenges face the people that is derived from those lower energy centers, precisely where the hands are placed from the statues that are being excavated today. Is it possible that the Moai are sharing the same period of time or the same age when the hardships of the earth and the challenges that the people faced were so great that they had to draw upon this aspect of themselves just to survive?
We also have now the idea that the statues themselves with their hands pointing at the belly, these are found all the way throughout Polynesia. They're found in the Korean Peninsula, found in South America, and Gobekli Tepe. So, here's the connection. If the earliest carbon-14 dating of Gobekli Tepe is now at 10,200 BC, we have a problem, because the same image of the pillar with the hands clutching the belly is also found in Easter Island, and the debris on Easter Island is much older than 800 years. Now we begin to realize that whoever put the statues on Easter Island and carved the statues in Gobekli Tepe, they had to be borrowing from the same manual. They may have been ostensibly the same people, or at least the same groups of people belonging to the same academy. And not just that, but different academies around the world who are borrowing from exactly the same manual, and they're all following the same procedure. It opens up the whole story of humanity.